You know what it is, black and snurdy, black and snurdy, black and snurdy, black and snurdy.
You know who it is, black and snurdy, black and snurdy, black and snurdy, black and snurdy.
Odie, Mari, Sodi, Maurice.
Maury Sodi, Maury Sodi.
Black and snurdy, black and snurdy.
Black and snurdy, black and snurdy.
Hey, oh.
Yes, Mo?
Are you ready?
Let's go!
Black and snurdy, black and snurdy, black and snurdy, black and snurdy.
It's the Black and Snurdy podcast with Odie and Maurice.
We now return to the Black and Snurdy podcast.
And we're back. I love that.
Me too. It's
I'm
one of my
fan.
favorite drops.
I wish, honestly, I want to high five you every time that we agree on a drop, but I want it to be vocal enough that it'll catch on there. And so my ultimate goal for this podcast is to do something between you and I that is worthy enough to be its own drop. That
I like it.
Even listeners who maybe like tweet at us or like email into us or like, this should be a drop.
You know what I think should? Yeah. Do you know what I think should be a drop?
What?
Ooh, I like it.
Odie, that will be a drop. And it will, but that will be a drop when the time is right. I'm not gonna elaborate on that. If you know, I'm not gonna elaborate on that. But I will say this. That's a good idea. One of my favorite songs, one of my favorite throwback songs is from The Barge. I was singing it at the bar that we were hanging out in while I was waiting for the bathroom, and there was this lady who was in the line before me, and I was just singing it in the line. She's like, oh my goodness, The Barge. And she's like, I didn't even know youngins knew this. And that made me feel so good because she thought that I was like young and everything like that. But
you are young.
I mean, I
32 is not old. I want everyone to know this. If you are in your 30s, if you are in your 40s, honestly, even if you're in your 50s, you are not old.
Fair enough. All I'm saying is that, like, that is a favorite song of mine. I like to utilize that song for a very specific reason in a very specific term. And I agree with you. That is worthy of a drop. I am going to hold off on making that drop until the right time.
If you know, you know.
Now, moving on, I feel like we should watch out now. What are we watching? What have you been watching? This is the time period where we go over and talk to the listeners about the things that me and Odie have been watching during this time period.
You said time period twice. We're communication majors.
Yes, we are. We're both communication majors, and we're doing our best. Anyhow, so
I'm just joshing. Okay, so we watched a few things this week.
Yes, we did.
Do you want to talk about the traumatizing one first, or do you want to talk about the experiment first?
Let's go with the traumatizing thing first, because at least we can end on something that was kind of positive.
Okay, sure. Mm-hmm. So, as you all know, we have been listening to...
Watching.
Oh, sorry.
Communication. You just threw me under the bus when it came to communication.
I did not throw you under the bus.
It's like, oh, we're communicating.
Rewind.
Everyone rewind.
Don't sound like that. Number one. Number two.
Sure? Are you sure about that? All right.
We were watching something called Them.
Oh, boy.
The Amazon Prime original.
Yes.
And if you remember last week when I spoke, or when, I don't remember last time we watched it, like 2 weeks ago when I was speaking about it, I was talking about how horrified I was at the show because of the, just felt like a lot of traumatic, just black trauma porn that was happening, specifically because we find out how their son Chester dies. Mm-hmm. And so now we finished watching out the series.
Yes, we watched.
We binge watched 4 episodes, right?
4 episodes straight, and we
find out about why the town of Compton is as fucked up as wherever they are is as fucked up as it is.
Yeah, there's a whole historical thing where there were some, just some white
like
evangelical Dutch people.
Dutch settlers who basically these black people who, whether or not they were slaves or not, who knows, but they were at that time, in the 1800s, there was the gold rush, and California, if you don't know, was not always a slave state. It was, for a long time, they basically said we are neutral. They were Switzerland. And it wasn't until they were realizing like what the money that would be made from slavery was when people started deciding, okay, let's bring in, let's make slavery a thing.
Yeah.
So when these black people who a lot of times were coming into it was like, what is it, Oregon Trail, all those things we used to play when we were little. Some
Oregon Trail, dysentery shit. In this particular story, all they were doing, they were passersby, their wagon broke, they literally were just like, hey, we just need a little bit of help. All we're asking is like, we're passersby, we're just trying to get on our way. The
people offered, they didn't even ask for help.
The settlement people offered to give
were like,
the residents,
stay here, we're going to give
wagon.
you food, we're going to fix your wagon, and then you could be on your way.
Yeah.
And then it turns out that the, crazy priest, or the priest, won't call him crazy, he was a priest who, or sorry,
just white dude,
settler,
white
who
settler.
was like one of the lead people in the church.
Yeah, he was a lead religious figure in the settlement.
Exactly. And we know that he lost his family to whatever, issues was happening in the settlement of like old times. People died for whatever.
Dysentery.
Anything like that. It was very difficult. They were in the desert of California. His family his wife and his child or children had died. And so we know that he basically is just kind of going through it, and he finds this young child, and what we're thinking of, like, he's taking care of him. They, when he comes upon the black people, at first he's very welcoming to them, but as time goes by, he all of a sudden starts becoming very weary, and then like he threatens the black woman because he like dropped his crucifix, and she finds it and she's like, oh, here you go. And then next thing you know, he's like, oh, don't try to put your feminine wiles on me.
Yeah, to just straight up summarize and this overarching theme. Essentially, this small settlement with a religious figure who lost his family, but took this white child in. Black people came across all this shit and was just like, hey, look, like, we're not even asking you guys for help, but like, if you're offering, cool. Can you fix our wagon? That's great. We're willing to do chores, but all we want to do is just fly under the radar. We're not even trying to do anything. Like, all we're just trying to do is just go on about our business, go on about our way. It's fine. We're literally not trying to rock the boat. White people in the settlement are just like, oh, like basically white people made a bigger deal out of the presence of black people than what we were actually bringing. We weren't doing anything. All we were doing was just existing, and all of a sudden it was enough to like make it seem like black magic exists.
Oh.
And they were just like, oh, why is he giving favor to this black people? Like, we've been digging for water and trying to find a well all this time, and it's like, why don't we ask this black guy if he's so special, whatever. And of course, because the black guy there has been a slave, he's like, I mean, if you just dig over there, that's probably where you're gonna find water. And of course, that's where they found water. And then of course, that's where they found water. And then they found the water, and they didn't give him credit, but he wasn't looking for credit because he was just like waiting for it to get his wagon fixed and whatever. And of course, the longer that the time spent, the more that everybody was just like, oh, these black people must be marks of the devil and the beast.
Spoiler
and
alert,
and
if you didn't realize already. Spoiler
for America. All we ever did was just exist, and then somehow we became a problem and the solution and the scapegoats and the something. That was the whole episode. And so we don't even get into it because that's just America.
Yes, and it just talks about how basically the black people, the black woman curses the priest and the whole community because they end up killing them, and or they torture them. She curses them, and then that's why we know that area of Compton where they're living is so shitty.
Yeah. And we should curse. We should start cursing people.
This land is already cursed.
No, it's not. But it's not working.
It is working.
No, it's not.
It is.
How is it? Is it working for us or?
This is my theory.
It ain't working against the white people.
This is my theory.
Ooh, as a matter of fact, I don't even have a problem with talking about this. Can we talk about this?
Yes, please. Our ancestors, both our indigenous Native American ancestors and our African ancestors, have cursed this land. This is the thing. You and I may not necessarily feel it as bad in the sense of the overarching sense of like, oh, we're cursed. But the way that this country is literally falling down, there's nothing that we are doing that is like causing us to rise in the sense of like all these other countries are doing leaps and bounds over us. We literally have a mass shooting every other day. If that is not a cursed country, like I can't tell you what it is. Every single thing about us is literally crumbling. And my opinion is that this land is cursed. The black people and the indigenous people and the just non-white people who are on this land, we are like, depending on who you are and what you do, you're not going to be feeling it as much as the white people, because the white people are the ones with the most to lose. If you think about it, what is the thing that white people have been scared about for so long is that they are going to be exterminated and there's not going to be any whiteness, right? But if you look, when you just look at like demographics, there are more black and brown people in this country and in the world, but just in this country. And soon, they are going to be the white people are going to be the extreme minority, and we are going to be like turning things around. I still feel like this land is cursed. It is cursed for them because nothing that they do is going to prosper, because every single thing that they've done has been to the detriment of all of us.
Odie, why is it? You know what? I don't want to be dismissive of what you're saying. And I'm not dismissive of what you're saying, but I also don't want to combat what you're saying, because in my heart of hearts, I want to believe that our ancestors are cursing this land and cursing these people. But at the same time, fucking Jeff Bezos is mad billionaires and is mad white fucking affluence and shit like that. Meanwhile, I'm over here knowing all of the fucking names of so many black people who have been gunned down fucking by police. You know what I mean? And there's an argument that you could say that those aren't even like tied together, and how are they even in the same sphere? But if you are aware, and if you know, then they technically are. I'm not saying that, like, I want to make it very clear. This land is cursed. This land is mad cursed. I agree with you. But boy, oh boy, man, these curses, like the white people aren't feeling it the way that we're seeing it, I would say. We're seeing the curses happen, but the white people aren't feeling it. They're not feeling it. Not really.
I think that, we cannot dictate how curses. Well, there's no way for us to dictate how curses are given out. The only thing that I can do is use all of my witchy woo woo powers to ensure that black people feel it the least that we can, and that when this empire crumbles, that we are the ones rebuilding it in the way that is going to be just and equitable for everyone. It's still fucking shitty, but that's all that we could do. Literally, that's all that we can. That's all we can put our energy towards.
Okay.
But so that we watched that episode, it was shitty. More trauma. I thought it was going to be a reprieve, but you can't even think about that with this stupid fucking show.
But much like with every, like I said, like a long time ago, that this is a specific genre. The genre being of just like black
racial
trauma, and with all black racial trauma in the last act, in the third act, it's always like we have to spend 2 whole acts going through all of this racial trauma of just like all the stuff that our families and our ancestors have experienced and these characters have experienced. And in the third act, guess what? We fucking get we say, fuck this shit. Enough of this. We get ours. I'm not going to spoil it, but
why can't we spoil it? If you're listening to this is about to be a spoiler, because I can't say whether or not.
And the spoiler alert, you know what?
We need a little spoiler alert thing.
we about to spoil the fuck out of them. So if you haven't watched it, tough titties. And if you haven't watched it, then you boy, oh boy, we're gonna spoil it. In the last episode, guess what? Every family member is like, enough of this bullshit. They figure out their own specific individual issues. The mother fucking finds her way out of that mental institution to go help her fucking children. Her daughter, the oldest daughter, who had a whole like. Her whole arc was hating herself and hating, not like, she was like very scared about possibly being like her mother, to the point where like the whole series was essentially her coming up with this weird ideal of like coming up with a white imaginary friend that led her to believe that like, oh, she wanted to be white, she wanted to be like white or whatever, to be not like her mother or whatever. She realized that like, she realized her flaw, or came to the realization that was not like
Ben Carson. I hope you're listening.
Yeah, you know what? Fuck you, Ben Carson. Do you know how many times I have to deal with white people who have gone to Baltimore and been like, yeah, I went to the Blacks and Wax museums, mind you. Like, they have to go through a whole middle passage. The passage where in wax statues, there's an entire section in that museum that literally replicates what it's like to be a slave in the quarters of the boats that transported us from Africa to America. The middle passage, those boats. There's a whole wax section of that, right? But every fucking time, I hear about my white friends who are like, oh yeah, I went to the Blacks and Wax Museum. You know what's really uncomfortable about that? The fact that Ben Carson is there. I'm like, he's in the back after you go through the middle passage. Why the fuck is that the thing that made you like gasp for air and be like, I don't feel comfortable in here? So you went through the whole middle passage, and then but seeing Ben Carson's ass was what made you feel uncomfortable, you fucks. Anyhow, sorry. With them, the daughter.
The daughter realizes like she had a lot of self-hatred and anti-blackness in herself. Yes. The baby girl, she realizes Miss Vera is fucked up.
Yep.
The father goes through his own realizing of his own guilt about what happened to the mom.
Yes.
And the mom realizes her own guilt. It's a lot. Now, this is my one thing about the ending.
The ending was mad ambiguous.
Exactly. I don't care about, I don't need to watch another season of this, honestly. And this is my thing. I loved the little girl. I loved the whole cast. Amazing cast, amazing actors and actresses.
Yes. I
want them to go on and prosper and literally like do so much. The lead character, the mom, she's Nigerian. So Naija Node Kari Thank you. And she went to Howard. So HU, So all of those things, amazing. We love the young girl who was the older daughter who was in Us. We love that little baby. She was so freaking cute. Father was really good. But I don't want to see them in another season of this, because my fear is at the end of this, they're standing at their front door, fire around the house. They don't know, we don't know what happens to them. I don't want to see a season 2 where now the whole family's in some sort of institution, the father's in jail, the kids are in some sort of foster care situation. Okay. I just am not interested in seeing any more black trauma.
All right, so real talk. One, I don't think that this story, I think that what we've been hearing is that if there is a season 2, it's going to be an anthology. It's going to be a whole different story. But also, too, I'm slowly starting to realize that that is sadly a part of our culture. We don't get to have open-ended sort of things. I don't know if you realize this or if you remember this, but when Get Out occurred, when initially there was 2 endings to Get Out initially. There was the ending that we all knew when, the lights blare and it's, Lil Rel. But the original ending was that the lights blare, it's the cops, and then he goes to jail for the killings that happened, and then, he's just in jail, and Lil Rel comes to visit him in jail, whatever, and they changed it because that was the original ending. That's how it was supposed to end, because that's just how bleak. in my mind, sadly, we don't get to have like open interpretations of like what happened endings, because like they were standing in front of a ring of fire while cops were like with guns against them or whatever as a family, and they stood united. There's, in my mind, not a lot of room as to interpreting what happened.
I mean, what I'm going to say is the best thing about the finale was I'm grateful that we did not see the police open fire on that family.
That's
the only thing that I could hope for. And I'm just sick. I'm just sick of seeing black trauma, black death as just kind of fodder. And what I said to you before, and when we were watching it, was this is not for black people. Because every lesson that they were talking about and wanting you to learn, we already know these things. Now, unless you are a black person, now, and I'm not to say there are not black people who their parents, or for whatever reason, like they're privileged enough that they grew up with maybe money or something, or not around a very open racism. But I don't feel like this was for us to watch. It was just extremely traumatic.
Can I ask you something?
Yes.
Because it dawned on me. I think when we were at a bar earlier today, I told you about how like I worked at a job like strong, like maybe 7 years ago, where a Latinx girl, like I had to explain to her, it was the year that like it was when Nelson Mandela died, and I had to explain to her who Nelson Mandela was. She's like,
yeah,
who is that? You know what I mean?
Don't know.
I'm not doing that voice,
but
I'm doing that voice for a reason, and I know I shouldn't do that voice.
Terrible.
But my point is that like the fact that like I think these things exist not for us. I think they exist for who comes next. It's not for us. Yes, like you and I know this stuff exists and knows this stuff is real without having to watch this series, because our parents did a good enough job passing down these stories and passing down these experiences, and also we just see through social media all of this stuff and we feel it through the ancestors and whatnot. But it's not lost on me that there is probably a disconnect of people who came behind us, who are growing up behind us, thinking that like, oh, things are better because we're talking about things and whatever like that. I think these things need to exist so that they can see that this existed, this stuff happened, because like there's gonna be just like a disconnect that exists.
I agree. Like
for them, this is for them, not us.
I do agree on one hand that there is a disconnect with the younger generation, because I was watching. I was on TikTok looking for stuff for work. Excuse me, and I saw two things that annoyed me so much. One of them was there was a
as you were saying,
a video. Sorry. There was a video of this young black boy talking about like racism against white people, and he was doing one of those TikToks where it was like he had recorded his voice talking to himself and then going back and forth, and basically the thing was like about why like black people being racist to white people, and the person was like, he was like, but we can't be racist because it's just prejudice, and he's like, that's the same thing, and it was just like, sweetie, no, it's not.
Yeah.
And there's a lot that you have to understand about racism. Like, one, is race a construct? Yes, it completely is. However, has the construct of race been used to subjugate and objectify a lot of people in this world? Yes. Can I, as a black woman, subjugate a white person? Unless, if I was in Nigeria right now and I own everything and I won't hire white people or something, then you could say possibly racism. But even then, the fact that Nigeria was colonized, and literally my father is older than Nigeria being free, and the fact that we are still under, even just ideologically, and our laws are still under British colonial rule, in the sense that we didn't go revert back to what we were pre-colonization.
Right.
We are still a Eurocentric white supremacist country.
Yes, look, there is a scope of history that we understand, and it took a long time for even us to get to we're in our 30s now. It took a long time for even us to get to the point where we kind of understand at a larger state. There are those who are coming after us. Yes, things are, like both.
Well, people just are talking about this post-racial society. A lot of black people.
I'm not yelling at you.
I know.
I want to make this clear. Hey, everyone out there, there is no such thing as post-racial. There's no post-racial. There's no post. There's no post. There's no post.
Honestly, listen. You want to know how there's a post-racial society?
No, there isn't.
No, I'm going to tell you.
Not even in Marvel.
The only way that we've had a post-racial society is the idea of when race was created in the 15-something century, the 16th century. Ever since then has been the post-race. We've been talking about race since then because before then, race was not a thing.
Whomever decided that white was the default and that everything else was based upon
Anglo-Saxons.
that was post-race. so that is everything that we're doing is technically post-race. So there's no such thing as post-race in the little positive thing that I'm not doing this anymore. Can we move on?
Yes, we can. Anyway, race. The next was terrible. I do not want to.
That's not what I left it.
That's what it was. It was terrible.
It was terrible to you.
I just don't feel.
Okay.
I feel like we could there? You know what I want people to watch
as a piece of work, as a piece of
listen,
art.
Okay, listen. This is what it was. Great acting. Mm-hmm. Great cinematography. Mm-hmm. I think the writing was pretty good. Some things I felt it could have been a little changed. Mm-hmm. However, the plot and the storyline for me. Horrible, terrible. I would not recommend. Is it
horrible and terrible because it's like a traumatic experience, or is it horrible and terrible because of just like
the traumatic experience?
The execution was awful.
I think that it was a great concept, poor execution in the storyline, not everything else. I feel like if this was taking out as much, and we've talked about certain things that I've said that could have been done differently.
I understand,
that would have given it an A+.
I understand. There you go.
I think that. You know what we're gonna watch next?
What?
Exterminate the Brutes. Because yes,
we
are. We're watching that next.
If this is how you feel about this,
no, because Exterminate the Brutes, I feel like it's gonna be
documentary about the same thing but actual factual shit.
Because I personally feel
what is wrong with you?
Personally feel like Exterminate the Brutes is going to give what them thought it was giving, without the explicit trauma that them, for me personally, caused. Because you watched it with me and you saw how much of that series I couldn't even sit in the same room or have my eyes and ears open to even take it in.
Yeah. So we're gonna watch a documentary about the actual extermination of our people, but in great detail, as opposed to a fictionalized version.
But it
with
also
heightened versions of stuff that happened.
I personally feel like that it's gonna be better, and it's gonna be. And I think that the same way you can watch a documentary and we'll get a lot more from it, even if it's still talking about the same thing. I think that people will be able to realize more and can stick with them. Because it's factual versus somebody watching something that is fictional. Because when you watch something fictional, someone can always say, "Oh, well, they were just exaggerating because it was TV." Versus you watching something with real, and you could go and look into a history book and say, "Ha, yes, exactly. They did cut off people's hands, and they're still selling chocolate hands in Brussels as a something that's related to that from the 1800s."
I'm not doing this with you tonight.
Well, we could listen.
I'm not.
This is my pick. But you know what? You had your own pick of things to watch.
I sure did. And with the next 2 minutes, I'm gonna figure this shit out. Thank you so much for this. Anyhow, so if y'all were listening in the previous weeks, I was so happy. In fact, I was so happy that I used it as like the thing that I was happy about, that I was gonna get you. And so here was the task. The task was me. I am a nerd. As part of the Sexy Nerd Black and Snurdy podcast. I am a big fan of anime. Anime is a medium. I am a firm believer that there's so much anime that exists out here, various genres within the medium of anime, that I guarantee that I can get anyone into an anime series based on something that they like or something that they're interested in. And based on what Odie had presented to me as something that she likes, granted, this was before I found out that she was a big fan of volleyball and that she actually like was a. Otherwise, I would have said, "Hey, why don't we watch Haikyuu?" But I wasn't given that.
Is that the one where there's the young boy who's like trying to be a volleyball player
Yes.
on the team? I have watched that one before. I did like that one.
Oh well, then
I haven't watched all of it. I think I watched like 2 episodes, but I liked it.
okay. Well, I'm glad that I didn't. Well, I don't know how I feel about the fact that I'm just finding this out. But instead, I took what you liked. I took that like not something that's super duper violent, but something that is like kind of like it's. Like it's more grounded in reality. It's like it's a shorter series. It's not like a long, like 90 episodes or whatever like that. It's only like I think 24 episodes or whatever. And like it's grounded in reality. There's some sci-fi elements into it. I watched with you the series called Erased. Now, for those of you who are not familiar, here's a summary of Erased. 29-year-old Satoru Fujima is sent back in time 18 years to prevent the events leading to his mother's death, which began with a series of kidnappings while he was in 5th grade. We watched the first 2 episodes. I wanted to watch a 3rd episode tonight before we got on this podcast, because I have a 3-episode rule. Like, if you watch 3 episodes of a series and, like, you're still interested on your own in watching it, then that definitely means you're hooked. We only watch 2 episodes, so, like, now it's just, like, it might be on the fence. But it's okay. So, having watched these 2 episodes of this series, let me know how are you feeling?
I hated it.
Do you really mean that?
No, I'm just kidding.
Oh, boy. My heart sank right
No,
now.
I liked it. It was a good story so far. I like the characters. I'm very interested to see how he's going to navigate being like back in his like middle school body with his 29-year-old.
I don't even think it's middle school. I think it's elementary school.
Well, I feel like he's like 6th grade or 7th grade.
Hold on.
I feel like for some reason I'm thinking middle school is something
he's a 29-year-old and he goes back 18 years. How old are you? What's 29 minus 18?
11. So that's middle school.
Is that middle school? Oh.
5th grade. 5th or 6th grade. Depending
okay.
how 5th or 6th grade.
I know that, like, all right, so I'm not trying to nitpick. I'm literally not trying to be a dick. Where in Baltimore, the elementary school, the last age in elementary school or last grade is 5th grade. And then middle school is 6th, 7th, 8th. And then high school is 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th.
Yeah, same here in New York. But I just think that some people in who were 11 were in 6th grade.
Okay, yeah.
So
yeah,
that's why I'm like,
fair.
I'm not sure. But
I'm not trying to be like a nitpicky bitch. You know what I mean?
think
like, I just want to be clear that we're on the same page. Anyhow,
I think
continue.
that like I'm really interested in seeing how he navigates that and this whole relationship that he has with, is it Caillou or I'm thinking of the PBS.
No, not Kai, not the fucking ball.
He says her name a lot, but I'm not. It's like bouncing out of my head right now. But either way, he has like his friend who he's trying to save, who died when he was younger, and he's just like, oh, I could have saved her. That to me is really interesting, and just the whole story of him, the whole premise of him being able to, what does he call it?
He calls it revival.
The revival.
Revival initially in like, I guess the regular present day is like like
5 minutes in the past.
Basically, yeah. He lives his life and then like something is wrong. And then he goes back 5 minutes in the past to correct whatever happened just then, you know?
And okay, do you want to know something else I'm interested in knowing?
What's
is
up?
like, so you know I like a lot of sci-fi stuff.
Yeah.
And I'm aware in as much of my sci-fi knowledge about physics and the whole quantum timeline and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
So like in my mind, I was thinking, okay, 5 minutes probably is even if you were to change one tiny thing in a timeline, you could possibly impact like the timeline in great detail.
Yeah.
Like even if you were to accidentally step on a bug in the Jurassic era,
Yeah.
like that could impact us negatively here. But I was thinking like, oh, maybe in this scenario, 5 minutes is the safest amount. But now that it's 18 years, I'm so curious
How much time
of
could
how
actually
things how things are going to change.
Yeah.
And also, you remember that movie, The Butterfly Effect?
Yes.
That's what this was making me think of.
Yeah.
And I was just like, in the butterfly effect, there's literally like just that theorem. There's nothing that you could do to change like fated events that are going to happen. So I'm like, how much am I going to watch of him like being in this grade where either his friend dies again, his mom dies again, and like his other friend stays in jail? Because if those are fated events, who knows if he's going to actually be able to change them?
Okay. Yeah. No, I'm right there with you. Kaio, by the way.
Kaio, but that was kind of close to Kaio.
Yeah. Yes. it's just the enunciation. Kayo as opposed to whatever.
Yeah, whatever his name is. He's annoying.
You bald ass bitch.
It's just annoying.
But either way, I'm going to. Are you interested in continuing to watch this?
I am interested in continuing to watch it.
I want to watch this with you, and I know that you're gonna be leaving soon, so I'm glad that I was at least able to spark whatever that Tupac quote is, like to spark the mind, to start the brain that led to the thing. I'm glad that I was able to spark the thing that led to you wanting to continue this series, and I want to enjoy it too. So,
and then after we
go on
watch
this journey together, we'll go on this journey together. Okay.
After we finish the animated version, I really want to watch the live action. Have you watched it before?
Yes, I have, and that's a whole conversation that we can have as far as like the anime and the live action. Okay.
Yes.
But with that being said, I think it's time for us to just like take a quick break. Let's just chill for a minute, okay?
BRB.
BRB.
You're listening to the Black and Snurdy podcast.
Thanks for listening to the show. If you'd like to contact the podcast, you can reach us via email at blackandsnurdypodcast@gmail.com. You can also find us on Instagram and TikTok at Black and Snurdy Podcast, as well as on Twitter at Black and Snurdy. You can find me, Maurice, on all social media under the handle Licorice is Legit. That's LICORISH is legit.
And you can find me on Instagram. It's ThatSOD_THATSOD.E. And on Twitter, THATSOD_E. And don't forget to like, rate, and subscribe to us. Tune in next time to the Black and Snurdy podcast, where nerds of a feather flock together.
Remember?
Bye.
Boy.
Not yet.
No, this is keeping it. We're keeping this in. Don't forget to take your meds and your subs and drink water. Bye.
Bye.
I actually want to keep that.